You can see Artemis over there. Hi, everybody. Everyone who's here. I hope everyone is well and excited to talk about Artemis because I'm so excited. I have thoughts. How's everyone doing today? Hope it's a nice Sunday for everybody. I'm in a different environment, a different room. I guess that's the better word. Different room because I'm hoping that Moo will be a little less of a menace this time around. Hi! Because, yeah, Moo's a little bit of a menace last time. So I'm hoping she's on her little window perch right now that's right here, just chilling out. So hopefully, hi, everybody. So I'm hoping she just stays there. We are going to talk about Artemis, and Artemis is her favorite. So I don't know. She may get really excited. Hi, everybody. I hope all is well. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday, a great weekend. I was very productive yesterday. I was very proud of myself. Got a lot of cleaning done. Thanks to Hestia. Lit her candle and was all like, okay, let's do this. And I could feel her being like, she's so cute. Isn't Hestia just the cutest? It just makes me so happy. Look at my shirt. I wore it for Artemis because she loves anime. I mean, I don't know if that's just in my experience. Artemis really, really loves anime. She's been really into Demon Slayer with me because, I mean, isn't Demon Slayer basically about Apollo and Artemis? Like, come on. Tanjiro and Nezuko, how is that not Apollo and Artemis? But that's a different discussion. Yay! Oh, thanks. I'm very excited. I've been like getting back into anime, and I feel really, it makes me feel really good because anime just makes me happy. So I've been leaning into, especially younger me, like this is very nostalgic. So that also relates to Artemis because Artemis is, you know, attached to our childhood and everything. So that's been really nice. So how's everybody today? Are we ready to talk about Artemis and turning red? It's funny because I thought when I first came up with the idea to talk about turning red during this live stream, I kind of thought it was going to be like its own section. But then the more I thought about it, the more I'm kind of like, well, it could be the entire live stream and just like use turning red to talk about different aspects of Artemis and kind of the different themes and topics that surround her. Because I started to think more about it and I was like, wait a second, that's related to turning red, that's related to turning. So I'm like, so basically this whole thing is probably just going to be like Artemis and turning red, but when we're going to branch off from certain topics of turning red, you know, to talk about the bigger topic, like specifically like sexuality, which is a really big thing when we talk about Artemis. There's a lot of controversy within the community and even outside of it about Artemis and sexuality. And I think turning red kind of actually made me realize a lot of things about how I personally view Artemis in relation to sexuality. Also about friendships and bonds. That's a big one. So yeah, I'll have a lot of really cool things. I'm really excited to hear what you all have to say. On your own like thoughts about it and what you think about what I have to say. But before we get fully into that, I actually wanted to use this opportunity to showcase my Artemis statue that I got. Isn't she beautiful? So I had Death's Head Divination make her for me. They actually have this whole project going. It started out with where they took Mary statues that they found thrifting, and they would turn them into statues for the Norse goddess Hel. But then eventually they started doing all different kinds of goddesses. Moo wants to say hi. She loves this statue. She loves Artemis so much. Yeah, so they make all different kinds of goddess statues. They've done different kinds of Artemis ones, Aphrodite, Persephone, Hecate, and everything. So I had been struggling to find an Artemis statue. I don't know if you all noticed, but it's like most of them are really sexualized. And that made me very uncomfortable because I just don't see Artemis that way at all, especially considering, like, I don't know, I kind of always see her as very young. And it was just also, like, regardless, I feel like, of what age you see her as, it's just, I don't know, that's just not how I personally view Artemis, and it made me really uncomfortable seeing her so sexualized. I think it's especially because a lot of it's the mixture of Artemis and Diana. So I was like really struggling to find one that I liked. So I finally was like, oh, wait, I know who I can ask. So yeah, they made her for me, and she's beautiful. And I love her. I especially, what I loved about this one, because you can choose what statue that, you know, they'll give you different options that they think would be nice, and you can choose. And I really liked this one because a lot of people don't know that Artemis is a goddess of dance. She's a dancer. And I love that, like, I feel like this statue is it shows her as a dancer, as very free-spirited, as just not giving a fuck, you know. It's very Artemis. She's doing her own thing, and she's having fun. And those are things that I associate the most with Artemis. She also seems very, like, youthful and just having a good old time. And she's, you know, also because of the colors, I love it. Works too in my apartment, doesn't it? Yeah, she fits in so well aesthetically. But I also just love the dark colors because that's also Artemis for me. That, like, darkness, the fierceness, the ferociousness, wild, you know? So, yeah. Yes, she is. She's the goddess of dance. And actually, that is one of, in my beliefs, one of the reasons she's really close friends with Dionysus and Ares is because they're all dancers, specifically Ares too. A lot of people don't know that Ares is a dancer, but he's a dancer. And I just imagine that the three of them love to just party and have a good time. They have, like, forest raves and they just dance all night. So, the good thing about them is that it's a range. It depends on how big the statue is. Like, this was expensive because it's a very big, it's a big statue, but they will work with you. If you have a particular budget, they typically will find a statue that will fit in that price range and everything. I've seen ones like it ranged from, like, under 100 to into, like, 200, and it all depends on the size of the statue and how detailed you want it and everything. But if you message them, like, they're so accommodating. They are great. I have links to their Etsy shop because they do other artwork too, and they also they do a lot of thrifting, so you can get a lot of really nice, unique thrifted and vintage items from their shop and everything. So I have their Etsy and their Instagram linked above. By the way, none of this is sponsored or anything. I just really, really, really adore their work so much. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them. And I also know how hard it is for people to find statues that really represent how they see their gods. So I'm just showing that this is an option if you you know, can afford it. But yeah, they do other things too. Real quick, they made these for me. They had these really beautiful heart-shaped ruin sets, and I don't read ruins. So I actually asked them, I messaged them and I said, hey, would you be able to do Greek alphabet oracles in that? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So they recently made these for me. How cute, right? I'm in love. So yeah, they do excellent, excellent work. Highly recommend them, you know, if you're looking for stuff to add to your altar or to your witchy practice or your devotion, you know. So, but like I said, this isn't sponsored. I just am a big fan. I'm really now that I have a decent income, I really am trying to support more small businesses, not just with my money, but also with my platform, because I find that really important, especially because like the world's just getting tougher and tougher, you know, to make ends meet and everything. And so I want to do all that I can to help our community and the creatives in our community who are trying to put their amazing work out there. You know, I think it's important that when we can, this isn't to knock anyone. If you can't, you can't. Again, the world's difficult, you know, it's hard out there. So a lot of us can't, but if you can, definitely try to support the small businesses in our community that are putting really great work out there. So yeah, you can message them on Instagram. That's actually what I did. I messaged them on Instagram and for both the statue and the oracle. I just messaged them. They're wonderful and they are very accommodating. So I highly recommend them. Definitely check them out. Yes. Yes, Rose. Artemis loves dancing. It's funny. She's always trying to get me to dance. You know, she's always just like, just put on the music and let's go. Let's have a good time. We were actually doing it yesterday. We were listening to Simple and Clean by Utada Hikaru. Where's my Kingdom Hearts fans at? You know, and I was cleaning the bathroom and I could just feel both Apollo and Artemis just like, yeah. It just felt like the three of us were just like vibing to it as I was cleaning the bathroom. It was a good time. It was a good time. That's amazing, Jessica. Oh my God, archery and hunting because of Artemis. She is probably having the best time with that. I actually really want to take up archery myself. I've wanted to do it for so long. I was actually planning to do it, funny enough, 2020, and then everything went to shit. So that got put on the back burner, but we'll see what happens. But good luck to you with all of that. Oh my God, Forest Rave. Yes. That's literally what I imagine is just them just having a great time raving with all the nymphs and everything. Oh, you've been learning to dance for Artemis and Dionysus. I love that. Oh my God, they're probably just vibing with you. All right. Yes, Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, I recently added Simple and Clean and Sanctuary to my Apollo and Hyacinthus playlist. I made one and I'm like, these songs are so them, but it's also very nostalgic for me. So I also have them in Artemis's playlist because it's, yeah, all nostalgic, like Kingdom Hearts. Oh my God, that like dominated my life for so long. Yeah, I totally agree. Kingdom Hearts. Oh my God. Kingdom Hearts is the shit. Not a big fan of the third game. The first and the second will always have my heart. The dancing is great, especially dancing with other people just to do it. Highly recommend it. Artemis loves it. Dance it, you know, put on your favorite put on your favorite songs and just have a good time. Both for, like I said, Artemis, Dionysus, Ares, Aphrodite, even Apollo, you know, god of music. Hermes, forget it. Oh my god, Hermes. I actually haven't finished the third because I don't know. I just don't. I wasn't feeling it. I don't know. I don't know if it's just because it took so long for it to come out or what, but it wasn't it. It didn't hit me in the feels like the first and second one did. Oh my god, that's awesome. Voice act, get to see the voice actors. Ugh. Okay. So, Turning Red. Have you seen it? Have we all seen it? If not, I don't know if I need to put out a spoiler alert for it, because I don't know how spoilery we're gonna get, but just in case, spoiler alert, I guess, because who knows what's gonna happen. But if you haven't seen it, we're gonna be talking about it, and if that, you know, you don't want, then feel free to click off and watch it and watch the replay afterwards. I have mixed feelings about it in that I like it. I do like it, but I'm biased, and I'm going to put that out there. I'm biased because for me, it's extremely nostalgic because it takes place in 2002. And the characters, like the girls in it, are 13, and I was 14 in 2002. So for me, this was very like going, you know, down memory lane, especially because they're obsessed with this boy band Four Town, and I grew up during NSYNC and Backstreet Boy mania, you know, the boy band mania, where it was just every, you know, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, O-Town, 98 Degrees, you know? So I was like, oh my God, I get this, you know, I get this movie. Because it's funny because I can still remember being, it was like, I think it was Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys. The video debuted on MTV one night. And then I remember I can still, like, it's like it happened yesterday, going to school, and me and my friends are at gym class, you know, like waiting on the line to do whatever it is we were doing in gym. And I remember us just like squealing about the video, like being like, oh my God, did you see how hot he looked? I loved when he did this with his hair and blah, blah, blah. And it just reminded me so much of how the girls were in Turning Red. I'm like, that's exactly how me and my friends were when we were talking about like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all the new stuff that they were coming out with. And I was just like, wow. So for me, it hit a lot in the nostalgia. And I do think elements of it were really, really good. I just think that the storytelling could have been better. Like, I think because aspects of it were so good that I kind of wanted more from it, if that makes sense. But I still enjoyed it. And I've watched it like a bunch of times afterwards. And as I said, it brought up a lot of thoughts about Artemis, which we're going to talk about. Yeah, exactly. It was weird because I'm watching this and I didn't know it was going to be, it took place in the early 2000s when I saw it. So I was really expecting kind of not fully to relate to it because I was thinking it was going to take place 13-year-olds now. But then I'm watching, I'm like, wait, why do they have a flip phone? I was like, what? I'm like, huh? Like, I see the little elements that I'm like, wait a second, huh? And then I realized, I was like, oh my God, this takes place, like, this is my shit. Like, I was that age around this time. So it was like, it's funny too, because when I sat down to watch it, I could feel Artemis sit down with me to watch it. And I was like, why is Artemis here? Because I usually watch more like horror movies with Artemis. Because for me, I was the kid that was watching horror movies at a way too young age. Probably should not have been watching horror movies at the age I was watching them at, but I was, and I was a huge horror movie buff. So for me, like, those are very nostalgic, like the Chucky movies. That's a big part. That's as much as part of my childhood as Disney is. So I was confused because Artemis, there's some animated stuff that she watches. Like, she loves the studio Ghibli movies. She loves those. But like, she doesn't really watch the Disney movies with me, which for me is very nostalgic, very much a Disney kid. But so I was very confused as to why she was there watching it with me. And I was like, okay, whatever. Artemis, you want to watch it? Okay. And then I started, as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my God, Artemis, no wonder. This is a you movie completely. So it's just really funny. Oh yeah, he did a great job with the music. It was Billie Eilish and her brother that did the music for Four Town. But I love those songs because it really is just like exactly how all boy band songs are. Hi, chords. Okay. So let's get into it then. There's a lot. So I'm trying to think of where to start in how Turning Red relates to Artemis. I think the overall arching theme, though, that we're going to branch off from in different directions is, Turning Red is essentially about that time in a person's life. I think it's essentially about like going through puberty. It's about the teen years. It's about a transition, which, if you don't know, Artemis is the goddess of transitions, all different kinds. Specifically in ancient Greece, it was for girls transitioning from, girls to women, where they get married and then they begin having children. So that's kind of the big transition that she represents. But in today's day and age, I would say she is the goddess of all transitions, regardless of your gender identity or what transition you're going through. So their teen years is very big with all of that. And Turning Red really focuses a lot on that time because the girls are all like 13, so they're just entering that stage, right? Although nowadays I know, well, even I started puberty earlier. I was like 10. So but yeah, it relates, her turning into the red panda kind of is supposed to be symbolic of her getting her period. So it's attached to that, but I see it not just as specifically menstruation, but also just puberty in general, so that's kind of right. It was. Thank you, Rose. That's actually something that I like. A big thing for me is I do feel like, so Artemis typically represents girlhood and Apollo represents boyhood. But in my opinion, while that is still true, Artemis represents childhood in general. And the reason I say that is because Apollo is very much I can't even say still, because he's very much part of the adult world. Apollo is, even though he's seen as never fully moving into manhood because he doesn't have his beard, he doesn't get married, and from the ancient Greek standpoint, that means he's still young. But we are not ancient Greeks. So for us, how we view the transition into adulthood is very different. And in my opinion, Apollo has transitioned into adulthood. Apollo is education, and specifically higher education. Apollo is part of all different kinds of stuff that's very adult. He's about structure and order. He's about civilization. He's about medicine and philosophy and all these things that are very much attached to being an adult. That adults do, careers that adults are part of, and stuff like that. So Apollo I kind of see him much more in the adult realm. I think there's aspects of him that are still very much attached in the realm of children. That's not, that I'm not negating any of that. But Artemis pretty much is anchored in childhood. She is very much like that wild, free-spirited, does what she wants, kind of follows her own laws and rules. She's savage in a lot of ways. One of my favorite lines actually to describe the whole thing, it comes from a Taylor Swift song, the song 7, and it's before I learned civility, I used to scream ferociously anytime I wanted. And to me, that line represents Artemis and why Artemis is anchored in childhood. Because in that, she says, before I learned civility, basically before I grew up, I used to scream ferociously anytime I wanted to. And that's how it is, right? As a child, you follow your own intuition, your own feelings, your thoughts, your wants, desires, without really thinking about the world around you or consequences or what's appropriate or proper. Like I was having a conversation with my coworkers, at the library where, every once in a while you hear children just screaming their heads off. And one of my coworkers said, I wish I could do that. But kids can get away with it. Kids can do the not proper thing and be as wild pretty much as they want to be. And it's okay because we're just like, well, those are kids. But if an adult was to behave like that, then it would be a whole big problem. So I believe Artemis is very anchored in the childhood stage. So for me, she represents childhood as a whole, regardless of your gender. You don't need to identify as a girl for Artemis to represent your younger years. Yeah, like that. Apollo and college really just goes very well together for me. Hi, Dag. Hi, Belle. Okay. But yeah, I think so for me, Artemis is very rooted in childhood. So that means she behaves very much like a child or a teenager. So in my experience with her, she's not really strict. She's not serious. She's much more whimsical and she's very wild. Like wild, I feel like I'm going to overuse that word a lot in this stream, but it really is the best way to describe Artemis. It's like as if you brought a wild animal into your house and you're expecting them to behave a certain way. And it's like, no, it's a wild animal. It's going to do what it wants to do. And that's Artemis. She does what she wants to do, how she wants to do it. And it's the opposite too with her and Apollo. Apollo's more the strict one in my experience. He's all about rules and guidelines and laws and doing things the appropriate way, and he's about being proper and honest and all that, while Artemis follows the laws. Apollo follows the laws of humanity, the laws that humans created, while Artemis follows the laws of nature. So she's not completely lawless, but it's her laws are dictated by nature, which is it's very different from the laws that exist within civilization. So Artemis, in my experience, is definitely much more on par with behaving like how children and teenagers behave. Yeah, exactly. Like, I do think turning red was all about how, she had this. So basically the whole thing is that this family, the women in the family inherit a panda spirit that lives inside them. And it's supposed to kind of represent puberty because it shows up at a certain time, similar to how, like, your period, if you're someone who menstruates, shows up, just comes knocking like, hi, I'm here, and it shows up, and it's whenever they get really emotional. It doesn't even have to be like angry or sad. It could be like even like really happy, and just these extreme emotions, and then they turn into a red panda. And so the symbolism of that is very much about keeping your wild animalistic part of you. And for me, how I see that is it's not just that, but it's like your child self, because I see those kind of combine in one, again, because Artemis for me is a representation of childhood and my child self. And since she's all wild and free spirited and animalistic, that it's all kind of one in the same. Because in the movie, May decides to keep her red panda because they have a special ritual that they do that can seal the panda spirit, and all of the women in the family have done that, but May decides not to. She decides to keep her red panda spirit. So it's kind of like this idea of, I at least saw it as keeping your inner child with you, no matter how old you get. Don't ever forget that version of yourself. Don't let society dictate that you have to get rid of that completely, because it's a part of you and it's an important part of you. Yes, I like that. Yes, Apollo is a more lawful alignment. Artemis is more of a chaotic alignment. Yeah, absolutely. Though Artemis is chaos, the way I see her chaos is that, what's that line that it's, what is chaos to the fly is nature or something to the spider, kind of thing. Something like along those lines. Like, that's kind of Artemis's chaos is that it, because it's nature, and for us living the way that we do, a lot of nature feels chaotic because we're so used to being able to control things and for things to be very put in a certain place, a certain box, and nature doesn't work that way. Nature just does. It's about survival and everything. So for Artemis's chaos, it feels chaotic, especially if you're looking from the lawful Apollo side of things, what Artemis does and what she represents is chaotic, but when you are in Artemis's position, all it is just nature. It's just nature. Yeah. I'm glad Artemis helps me a lot with that. I actually get a lot one of the, like this is a compliment that means so much to me. I've gotten a lot of younger people who say I inspire them and make them happy that, you know, they see me. I'm going to be 34 in June. I mean, look at me wearing my Yasha Sesshomaru shirt. But, you know, I still very much love all the things that are considered childish. You know, I wear pastels, I wear cute clothes, I still enjoy anime and watch Disney movies and do all of the things that little Jessie loved to do. And I do it proudly. And a lot of people have said that that makes them happy to realize that as they get older, they don't have to let go of any of those things. And it's the truth. And you shouldn't let go of any of those things because it's a part of you and it makes you happy. And I've kind of realized that, especially if you have a wounded inner child, which is another thing we could talk about because I know Artemis has been integral in helping me heal my inner child. Like, she is the one. Like, I could not have gotten to where I am now with a lot of my dealing with my childhood trauma without Artemis. So she definitely helps a lot with anything that has to do with trauma or shame or pain or anything like that within your child self, within your childhood, because she's very good with stuff like that because it is her realm. In my opinion, all of childhood, again, regardless, that's her realm. So yay! I love when people get excited that they get to be part of the live. It makes me happy. Also, I forgot to mention, I put some links above all the way at the top of the chat for Artemis, different resources if you want to learn more about her. There's one, the Stephanie Budin book. That's actually all like PDF files. It's not links to buy books. It's all free stuff. The Stephanie Budin book, highly recommend. That is a great overview of Artemis. Also, my favorite part in there is when she talks about sexuality with the goddesses, because she doesn't just talk about Artemis. She talks about Hestia and Athena and about them being maiden goddesses and what that means and entails. Highly recommend that because it just informs how we should go about looking at sexuality in relation to the gods and what to keep in mind. There is a short little chapter up there too that I really love, that kind of, it not only just tells you about Artemis, but it also informs about mythology and how you can't, it basically proves the point that I always make about mythology and how you can't take it so literally. And they use Artemis as a great example as to why you can't do that. Because when you look at her mythology, she changes. How she is in Homer is not at all the goddess that she ends up being, that people worship, and that even other writers ended up kind of making new mythology to better represent the goddess that they know. So yeah, that's definitely recommend that. And then there's a whole one about, we're going to be talking about Playing the Bear, which is my favorite Artemis festival, by the way. And Rose made a fantastic connection between that and Turning Red, which I didn't even think of. And I was like, oh my God. Just adds more layers to how this movie really just is connected to Artemis. But yeah, so if you want to know more about that festival, there's a link to an essay above. So yeah, check those out. Forgot to mention them before the chat gets too crazy. Hi, Melanie. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, 100%. So you know what? Let's talk about Rose with that question. Let's talk about Artemis and sexuality, because this is a big, I actually saw conversations about this on Tumblr very recently. This is a really, really big topic, specifically with Artemis, but I think with like maiden goddesses as a whole. I actually recently got one about Hestia and everything. So let's talk about this, because this is a real in-depth conversation. And so, in a nutshell, is it okay to relate to her as a queer teen girl? Yes. It is absolutely 100% okay for you to look at a god and see their mythology and see that there is elements there that you relate to with your own sexuality. So to be like, okay, Artemis, her mythology kind of seems on alignment with the queer experience, however you want to define it. And if you want to define it as because you're asexual, and so this sounds like how you experience your asexuality, so you want to see Artemis as asexual, or you want to see her as a lesbian if you're a lesbian. If that is how you relate to her, there's nothing at all wrong with that. It is completely okay to do that. Where the problem comes in is when people do the whole Artemis is asexual, and if you don't agree with that, then you're aphobic. That is where we have a problem, because it's not true. There's a whole lot of reasons as to why no person can ever say with 100% certainty, this god is this sexuality. The big one, of course, is that gods are beyond human concepts, and sexuality is a human concept. The gods, I mean, we don't even know, do the gods have physical bodies? Are they just energy? Do they feel attraction? Do they have relationships with each other? We have no idea how the divine actually operates. No clue. One of my favorite things that Socrates, I'm always gonna have to bring up Socrates. I love him. He keeps me grounded and humble. But he basically said that humans can't understand the divine because we only have human wisdom, and human wisdom does not go into the divine realm. So we can't reach that understanding, So for us, that's the big one, is there is no understanding of how the gods actually operate. So if we don't even know how they operate, how can we define them with things like gender and sexuality, right? Okay, so there's that. Then there's also the idea that when the ancient Greeks decided to see a goddess as a maiden or virgin goddess, they weren't trying to inform everybody about the sexuality of these goddesses. Because first off, sexuality was not a thing in ancient Greece like it is here. They didn't have like, oh, well, that, they're bisexual or they're asexual or they're a lesbian. No, there was no, it was simply you got married and you had babies. Like that is it. That was it. So, and let's remember too, it's funny to me that we can all agree that ancient Greece was extremely misogynistic, yet some people want to think that the ancient Greeks then cared enough about female sexuality to want to say anything about it within mythology using goddesses. Like they didn't give a fuck about female sexuality. So those stories, when they talk about Artemis, not where she's immune to Eros or Aphrodite, that neither one of them can find, they're not saying anything about her sexuality. They're not saying, oh, because she only likes women or because she's arrow ace. Like they're not saying that because they don't have the vocabulary for that or the understanding of that. But also, again, they didn't give a fuck enough about female sexuality. What they're saying is Artemis represents girlhood. She represents that time before a woman gets married and has sex to reproduce. So Artemis has to be a maiden goddess and be seen that way because that's the role she represents. She represents the time, and it makes sense too when you look at Apollo, because Apollo represents boyhood, but he's getting around because it was okay for boys to do that. Boys could go and sleep with other boys or sleep with girls. Like they could do whatever they wanted. It was okay as long as eventually they get married and have babies. For women, it wasn't like that. Girls needed to stay a virgin until they were married. So hence why Artemis is a virgin. And it's the same idea applies to other maiden goddesses. Like I love, again, Stephanie Boudin pointed this out, and I was like, my mind was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Like look at Athena. Athena is a maiden goddess, nothing to do with her sexuality. It's because she exists in the realm of men. How is she supposed to lead them and be respected by them? Because remember, we're talking about a misogynistic society. We're not talking about, this one. I'm talking about ancient Greece here. How is she supposed to be respected and how is she supposed to lead these men if she's having sex with them? Because in ancient Greece, it's kind of seen as when you are having sex with a woman, you own her, you possess her, you've conquered her. So Athena has to be unconquerable. So thus she can't have sex with men. So that's why she's a maiden goddess. It's a lot of this is about the way the ancient Greeks are understanding, like how they're fitting these goddesses in their society and their understanding of how society works. So that's what it's all about. And I think with Hestia, if I remember correctly, Stephanie Boudin was talking about how it was about the idea of because she represents the home and everything, that she stays a maiden goddess because it's supposed to represent like never leaving kind of thing. Because when women are married off and have sex, again, to have babies for no other reason, to have babies, they leave. It goes back to the whole Demeter and Persephone myth of why that was so powerful, because girls are pulled away from their families, from their parents and their siblings, and they rarely, if at all, see them again. And so Hestia is supposed to represent kind of that eternal flame and that whole idea of never leaving and being the daughter that stays behind with her family. So in order to do that, she has to be a maiden and a virgin goddess. Yeah, they did spend a weird amount of time thinking about the gods banging. I know, and then people get mad at me when I like ship the gods. It's like, excuse me, the ancient Greeks were doing this all the time. Why are you getting mad at me? Because I really enjoy thinking about Ares and Apollo. Okay? Like, so sorry. I'm just practicing tradition here. Yes, thank you, Melanie. The passage is that Hestia represents the loyal daughter who's still loyal to her father as opposed to leaving via getting married, thus gaining her husband's surname. So yeah. So the idea is there's a very real function as to why these goddesses are seen as maiden or virgin goddesses. It has nothing to do with their sexuality or what their romantic or sexual preferences are. It has nothing to do with that, and it just has to do with their function within ancient Greek life and society and role and all of that. That's what it's about. Then there's also, going further down with these layers, then there's also the idea of what exactly is meant by the term maiden and virgin goddess. Again, ancient Greece only saw female sexuality as far as in how it related to men. It had nothing to do with anything else. It's how it related to men. And so all that it's really saying is that these goddesses are not married, pretty much, because the whole idea is women only had sex when they were married. They only had sex with their husbands when they were married. So all it's saying is that they're not married, so thus they are not having sex with men. That's it. That's all it's saying. Whether they're doing it with somebody else, I don't know. Nobody knows. But that is all that is saying. So, yeah. The whole thing, so to kind of wrap all that up in a nice, pretty bow, the whole thing is we just have to be mindful of all of that. Not to say, again, like, not to say you can't, because I get it. First off, I get it, especially for the asexual community. I understand completely because there is very, very limiting asexual representation out there. And limiting in terms of like it's not being there or it's not that great. I 100%. So I get seeing Artemis especially and the way Artemis is talked about and feeling like, oh my God, that's me. That's how I feel. And so you relate to this ancient goddess. Like, that's exciting because it's showing, I think it's showing people that these things and people like this and people who have experiences like this have existed forever. You know, this isn't a new concept that the Gen Zers came up with, you know, like queer people in all its form have existed throughout time. And so I think one of the reasons we as worshipers want to look at the gods like that is because it cements that idea in our heads that yes, like these feelings and these experiences are not unique. You know, they've been there for as long as humans have been around. So I 100% understand wanting to connect with that and wanting to hold on to that. And I'm all for it because I say every Pride Month, and I don't give a fuck how much it pisses people off. I say every Pride Month, by the way, our gods are queer. I say it knowing full well that technically, no, I can't say like with 100% fact that they're queer, but my point is that there are very queer themes happening within mythology to show, by the way, we've always been here and our gods love us. You know, it's a battle cry back to the people who are queer phobic and who are like, no, especially to like the TERFs that want to be like, oh no, Artemis and Aphrodite and Hera and Athena hate trans people. It's like, fuck you, no they don't, and I'm going to give you reasons as to why they aren't. You know, it's not me being like with 100% certainty like Aphrodite is trans, you can't, you know, you can't fight that, but it's more saying Aphrodite doesn't hate trans people because look at her mythology. It's right there to show that she absolutely loves trans people. So I think it's like you can say things like that, but it's also having to remember that we can't put complete permanent labels on the gods where we're having arguments about it, you know, to say, oh, well, Artemis is asexual, and if you think otherwise, then you're a hater, or Artemis is a lesbian, and again, if you think otherwise, you're a hater. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. I hope that made sense. But I definitely am all for, again, finding that representation, and if it resonates with you, you can absolutely use that in your relationship with the gods and your devotion to them. Again, the problem comes more if you're speaking for them, where you're like, no, this is who they are, I know, blah 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 blah. That's the problem always comes whenever you try to project your thoughts and beliefs and opinions and things onto everybody else. That is always going to be when something really becomes a problem. But if you're not doing that, then by all means, see Artemis as a queer girl. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I know, it's people essentially just want figureheads for their hate. They don't actually know enough about the gods to really be making any kind of statements about who they don't like. They really don't. And that's one of the reasons I do say our gods are queer, because that's me saying to the haters, like, you don't know enough about these gods in order to be sitting there saying that they hate us, because clearly they don't. The mythology's there to prove it, that they align way more with us than they hate us. Oh yeah, Zeus is bisexual for sure. I think all of the male gods are, I think they all have stories about being with other men. I would believe that Aries has 100%. Aries does. I think with Aries, it's very likely that a lot of things, because that's the other thing we have to keep in mind is that we don't have all of the stories that we're told. There's a lot that we don't have that was lost or even possibly destroyed. Who knows? You know? So we don't there's a lot out there about our gods that is unknown, of how the ancient Greeks saw them. So it's very likely that, again, there's way more queer stories or about the gods, you know, being queer as fuck, but we don't know. Yeah, they pretty much do. So, relating this back to Turning Red. So I can relate this back to Turning Red. So this actually was the big thing I thought of when I was, because this is a topic that comes up all the time, is about Artemis and sexuality and stuff like that. And I think the other layer, and again, this is just my beliefs of you know, from watching Turning Red and just how I see Artemis and everything. When I was watching it, I'm remembering, you know, as a kid and watching, you know, how even the girls in Turning Red were, you know, that being obsessed with boy bands. And that's like when your sexuality's really kind of, you know, coming out, and you're like, oh my God, you see these boys and they're dancing and they're singing to you, and you're like, oh my God, you know, you're like, you're feeling that sexual rush, and you're having these desires and everything that you don't know about, you don't understand yet, you know. And it's very, a lot of people during that stage, it's very just hyper sexual attraction going on, right? So if that's Artemis's realm, right? Artemis's realm is that childhood, and specifically also that the teen years. That's part of her realm too, because that's part of childhood. That's all part of childhood. And a lot of people see childhood as just being like from, you know, when you're born to 12 or something, even like, I don't know, to whenever you start puberty. But I see childhood as representing both that time and then also the teen years. I see it all together, because Artemis very much is it. Not only do I see her as a child, but I see her as a teen. She very much has teen energy. I don't know about you all, but she completely has teen energy. Like, you come on, you cannot see her showing like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I'm an adult mom. Like, abso-freaking-lutely. She's got the attitude for it. So the teen years, you know, and I can remember being a teen, and it was like that. It was just like, you know, all these boys, and they're dancing and they're gyrating, and they're like, oh my God. You get a bunch of boys together and they start dancing and something happens. Like, something just clicks. You're like, whoa. So if this is Artemis's realm, how can anyone say, like, oh no, Artemis is only this sexuality, when you have all these different kinds of, you know, teenagers experiencing all forms of sexual desire and experiencing their sexuality in different ways? You know what I mean? Like, how can you limit her to one sexuality when, again, like, that realm is just full. It's where people are figuring out their sexuality. You know, they're trying to figure out who they're attracted to. Do they feel attractiveness? Like, how do they relate to sex, and what even is sex? You know, like, what do they like? What don't they like? It's all of that is in that stage. So wouldn't that mean that Artemis kind of has to stay neutral in a lot of ways? Like, she can't just represent or be claimed by one community, because then that's excluding everybody else that isn't part of that community who's in that stage, right? Because I was thinking, like, because big part of Turning Red is about these girls experiencing their sexuality. And that was one of the reasons, like, there's a lot of backlash to the movie, is because it really dared to talk about that subject, which is very taboo to people, but it's very real. You know, it's a very real thing that happens to teenagers during that time, where they're very they just are just so like they're so revved up. And Artemis, so if Turning Red is an Artemis movie, then that has to be part of Artemis's domain, right? Being all like, oh my God, about boy bands has to be part of, because it still happens. Like, look at BTS. Oh my God. Like, there's always, you had the Beatles. How long ago? Like, you get boys together in a band or a group and either have them like playing music in some way, and there will be teenage girls and teenage boys and teenage non-binary people, teenagers basically, going wild. Like, it'll happen. So that has to be part of, of course it is, I think, attached to Aphrodite. I'm not gonna deny that, but it's also still part of Artemis's realm. So we can't limit her, right? Because then that's excluding people who experience different feelings or have different experiences in general during that time. Artemis is the coolest. Just gonna put that out there. New Kids on the Block. Yeah, exactly. New Kids on the Block. It's like every generation has something like that. And every time you have teenagers that go bananas. So that's kind of why I think you really can't say Artemis is this and just this, because she represents a whole stage in all of our lives, and we're all different. We all have different sexualities. We have different experiences with sex. We have different experiences. Like, we have different gender identities. And Artemis needs to be able to represent all of us. So it makes a lot more sense for her to, I mean, not that I'm ever going to imagine Artemis like going gaga over a boy band, because no, but I still think it's not necessarily about the specifics. It's about the feelings behind it. You know what I mean? It's essentially saying you can't say, I guess it's more of like saying you can't say she only represents this community, if that makes sense. Oh my God, yeah, Jonas Brothers, One Direction, Big Time Rush. Yeah. See, every generation has it. Everyone. So that's part of Artemis. It is. And it kind of makes sense too. You know what? I just thought about this. It also works because I love, like, have any of you watched Bob's Burgers? I think this is a perfect symbol of like what I'm getting at here. If you've seen Bob's Burgers, you might already know what I'm talking about. But I forgot the boy band. What's the boy band that Tina's obsessed with? I forgot what they're called. I just remember the one Louise loves is Boo Boo. I forgot. Yeah. Oh yeah, Boys for Now. That's right. Boys for Now. And like Tina's obsessed, of course. Tina, is obsessed with this boy band because it's very much part of a lot of teenagers' lives is to be obsessed with boy bands. So she's obsessed with boy bands, and then her little sister Louise is very like, she has major Artemis energy in my opinion, because she's very like, oh, like she's too good for that, but she's younger. I think she's like 8 or 9. And she's like, oh, I'm too, she's too cool for that. She's like a little menace. She's always, she's a little troublemaker. But she goes with Tina to the Boys for Now concert. And she sees Boo Boo and she loses her shit. She loses her shit for Boo Boo. And it becomes like a running joke throughout the whole series that she's like in love with Boo Boo. But the way she shows her love is Artemis to me. Like, this is Artemis. She gets violent. It's that violent, when you love something so much, you want to shake something, you want to throw a chair. Like, that's Artemis energy completely. Like, that's exactly how I can imagine Artemis showing affection. Like, when she gets those feelings, she's like, because Louise wants to slap Boo Boo. That's all she keeps saying. She's like, I just want to slap his beautiful, perfect face. I'm just gonna smack him. And that's exactly how I picture Artemis. Like, that would be Artemis. That's Artemis energy for sure. And even in Turning Red, you see that with Abby. Fucking Abby is one of the greatest fictional characters ever made. I said what I said. I would die for Abby. I love her. And she has mad Artemis energy because, she was just like the one teenage boy where she's like, my mom cuts his hair at the salon and I felt it and it was very soft. And she says it just like that. It's just very soft. Like, so aggressive. And I was like, yes. Like, that's an element that a lot of people don't talk about. And I wish they did, is how aggressive teenagers can get when they're really just attracted to someone or they're like obsessed with something. They get those emotions and it makes them like, ugh. Because I know that feeling because I've gotten like that before. I just want to slap his face. Yes, exactly. When you get a cute plushie and you're just like, oh, this makes me want to commit a crime. It's so cute. Like, I get like that. And to me, that's Artemis. That is complete Artemis energy happening. Because also Artemis loves plushies. She does. And she does get she wants to get violent because it's just, it's so cute. She can't handle it. But yeah, so that's kind of a whole other element of Artemis that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Some people don't have that. Some people don't experience that, which is completely fine. And that's why I think it is important that Artemis, we don't put Artemis in a box, because how we all experience sexual attraction, or whether we do experience it, it's different for everybody. Even though there are some things that are not universal, I wouldn't say universal, or that there are some things that some experiences that people do not all, but that there are some things that for a lot of people do also experience. Okay, there we go. I'm trying not to be so like, it's not generalizing. I'm saying there are some things that a lot of people experience, but then it's not universal. There we go. Got it eventually. Got it on the first try. No. But yeah, but I think that's why it is important to not limit Artemis, because experiences aren't universal. Finally. We got there. We got there, fam. Let's see. What else about Turning Red? So we talked about sexuality. I think there's also, I want to talk about, this actually just came to me when I rewatched Turning Red last week. I was thinking a lot about, because the movie really focuses on friendship. That's a big part of the movie is May's friendship, relationship with her three friends, and how important it is to her, because the whole thing is how she's able to control the panda for a while is she thinks about her friends, and her friends make her feel safe and make her feel more calm, so she doesn't feel those intense emotions that bring out the panda. So it's like it's essentially about, like, I think it's about the sisterhood, I think, and specifically in girlhood, how important your friendships are. But I would also say that in just being a teenager in general, our friendships tend to be the most important thing, right? When you're a teenager, your friendships are essentially like life or death in a lot of ways. Like, it feels that way. Like, when you lose a friend, it hurts. You feel like everything is over, you know? So, like, your friendships are extremely important. And I realize that that's relates to Artemis too, because Artemis has her whole entourage, right? Of other hunters, of nymphs. Like, she has a whole group of people around her that she's around more than her own family is. So it kind of I feel like it represents that. You know, we look at it as, I mean, the joke is that it's her gang of lesbians, which is also fine to look at, but you can also look at it as, it's like, that's her other family. Those are her friends. You know, those are the people that she has chosen, to her chosen family, if you will. And I feel like it kind of represents how important those relationships are in your younger years. Oh, I had so many I still have fictional crushes. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm in love with Tengen from Demon Slayer. I'm absolutely in love with that man. I'll admit it. Oh, and this one too. Wait, not him. Not you, Inuyasha, this one. I've been in love with him since, oh my god, forever ago. he's still there. I'm like, I have not given up my fictional crushes, and I will not. I will not. They make me happy. But yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways because it's, even though a lot of, like, most of the gods have kind of like their retinue, I think it's called. Hope that's the right word. Their entourage, I'll just call it entourage. They have, like, their, the other gods, minor gods, and whatnot around them. Yeah, that's the word. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but Melanie has it. Melanie's always got my back. um yeah, I think it's retinue, right? I don't know. The entourage, their group of people that kind of goes with them, and is part of their group, essentially. But Artemis has just always felt very different, because it was very much a part of her, was her being, because she doesn't even live on Olympus. Like, she doesn't live where the other gods live. She lives in the mountains and in the forests with her friends. So it does feel it also feels a little more like young adult-ish too, where, you go off to college, or you end up moving in with, and have roommates, or you move in with your friends and stuff like that. And where, again, your friends are kind of the center of your life. Oh yeah. I do definitely see her as liking, like, stays away because she doesn't want to deal with the drama. I also, it's my, like, my little UPG, but I also think, she doesn't, this isn't to feed any you can't worship these gods together because they don't get along kind of thing, because that's not true. But I do think she prefers to be as far away from Hera as possible. That's just my UPG. I think, because in the way I see her and Apollo, it makes sense to me, because Apollo can play nice. Apollo can rationalize things, and he knows the way, he kind of knows the way the hierarchy and structure and things operate. Like, he understands why Hera did what she did, and he understands why Zeus and Hera are married. Like, he understands how all this fits together, and so he knows the roles of everybody, and so he knows how to deal with all of that. Well, Artemis is wild. The only law she obeys is the law of nature, and she's much more free-spirited, free-willed, and no filter, and will do and say what she wants. So I think it's better for everybody that she stays in the mountains and doesn't necessarily hang out at Olympus that much, because who knows what she's gonna do or say. But those are just my thoughts on it. Oh, their court. I like that. Like in Steven Universe. That's another, actually, if we kind of like this whole using fiction to relate back to the gods, I could totally do one about Steven Universe, because Steven Universe actually has helped me so much in how I see the gods. So we can always do that if anyone's interested in that. Oh, good. I'm glad that some people agree with me about that, because it does. It feels, I don't know. Artemis definitely feels like friendships are very important to her. Like, her family, of course, is important. Specifically, her immediate family, like her mother and her brother, of course. But she does seem like friendships are just as important, Okay, cool. I'll add that to the list of things that we can talk about. I wanted to do a rewatch of Steven Universe anyway, so I love that show. But yeah, it's definitely helped a lot with how I see divinity, and especially how I see the divine, like how the divine sees us. I relate that a lot to Steven Universe. Yeah, same with me, Strawberry. My friendships are extremely important to me. My friendships are basically, like, I see them as my family. So they're, even in my adult life, they're extremely important. I think the issue too comes in with friendships and adulthood is our society puts so much emphasis on romantic relationships. So people tend to abandon their friendships the second they get a significant other. At least in my experience, that's kind of, and what I've been seeing around is that's something, and just the way people talk. Like, there's this idea that you need to do everything with your partner. And it's like you can't have separate things going on, which I never related to. For me, like, I love my friends, and I still, even if I had a partner, I would still want to do the same things that I do now with my friends. I still want to go hang out with them and be like, okay, you go, like say to my partner, you go hang out with your friends, I'll hang out with mine. Like, not everything has to be together. And I think that's kind of relating back to Artemis, another reason why that's part of her is because even in ancient Greece, she's supposed to represent that time before any kind of like, I'm not gonna call, romantic or marriages or romantic relationships happen. So the idea is that it's your friends or the relationships that are the most important to you, because it's supposed to be the time before any of that other stuff happens. But yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I really do love how people can find the gods and like help answer certain questions or form certain beliefs about the gods through fiction. I think that's really a fascinating thing, and it's something I realized I do a lot of, because for me, fiction has always been a very important element in my life since I was a little kid. Like, I was a Disney kid. I've been watching Disney movies since basically I was born. The first movie I ever saw was Beauty and the Beast in the theaters. I was like 3 or 4. My dad took me. And ever since then, I've just loved media. And I like to find it's basically all storytelling is what it is, which is exactly what the ancient Greeks did. They used stories to try to understand and relate and connect to the gods. And it's essentially the same thing today. Human beings just love a good story. We love stories. I could definitely see Steven Universe being an Aphrodite show. 100%. I actually, on Instagram, I said the part in Steven Universe that always gets me um is when Steven finds the tape that his mom made, and she's talking to him, and she says, because the whole thing is, for those who haven't watched Steven Universe, that's a lot to explain, but the idea is that his mom and Steven both can't exist at the same time. So she's not, when he's born, she's not around. So he only knows about her from what people have said about her. So this tape's really important because she's talking to him, and she's saying how excited though that she is that he gets to be a human being. And she says, whenever you love yourself and love being yourself, that's me loving you and loving being you. And whenever I get emotional every time I hear that, I see that scene, because it makes me think of Aphrodite. And that's how I picture Aphrodite's love, is when you love yourself and you're looking at yourself and you're like, damn, I got it. I got it going on. Or even, not even just your appearance or just any part of you, where you're just happy being in your skin, or you're proud of yourself, or any of that. That's Aphrodite. That's Aphrodite loving you. And it always makes me really emotional. Well, if you love archery, Artemis is definitely somebody to consider. She's awesome. I can definitely see Aphrodite in Giselle from Enchanted, 100%. I completely agree with that. Yeah, wolves are sacred to Apollo and Artemis, they have epithets that point back that means like wolf and everything. That's very, very important to them. That's actually the wolf is one of I call Leto, Artemis, and Apollo the wolf family. That's what I call them because that's one of the imagery that kind of conjures up in my mind when I think of them, and it's something I do associate very much with them is being wolves because it makes sense. They have a very much the three of them have a pack mentality where they're like very, very close. A lot of I think they're like one of the, if not the closest family in mythology. They were always worshipped together. They were always kind of seen as like that unit. And there's so many stories of them defending each other, and being there for each other. So, yeah, they're definitely, wolves are very important to them. Artemis was in the Iliad. Yeah, Athena's in the Odyssey because it's about her boy Odysseus. Athena and Odysseus. Artemis was very interesting in the Iliad, though. Not how we envision her today. She was very she was like making fun of Apollo about something, I think, and then Hera got all mad and like took Artemis's bow, like I think it was her quiver and arrows, and like beat her with it. And Artemis ran off crying to Zeus, like, "Oh my god, daddy!" And I was like, "Who is this?" I don't know. I do not relate to that Artemis whatsoever. So she was, but I think it was supposed to symbolize just how young Artemis is. I think that was kind of what Homer was getting at with that representation of her, is supposed to, like, she's a little kid, because that's essentially, what she's seen as being a child. It could. Deer is, in my experience, Artemis loves to use deer to kind of reach out. I've had that. I told that story, I think. Yeah, I told that story the last live stream when we were talking about communicating with deities, how she sent 3 deer to my house. And I was just like, oh, that's what a neat coincidence that is. She also sent a deer to help me when me and my friend got lost. We got lost hiking. Well, it's not really. We were doing like a trail, and we got a little lost. And I knew, I had a feeling we went the wrong way, but I was like, well, no, I was doing my whole gaslighting myself, as I tend to. And then there was a deer like right there. And I stared at the deer, and the deer looked at me, and I was like, we got to go back. I was like, we went the wrong way. We got to go back. And it ended up being, if we had kept going, we would have done that trail all over again. Like, we missed the exit, and I ended up finding it. So, yeah, she likes to send deer. So it could be, but I also am always of the belief that ultimately what matters is if you want to work with the deity. If you're interested, if after doing this live stream you're like, Artemis seems like a pretty cool god, I think I might want to say hi, then do that. It doesn't matter whether there were signs or she's been reaching out to you or not. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't, but it doesn't matter, because if you want to hang out with Artemis, she'll totally hang out. All right, what else? Oh, so we can talk about we can talk about the whole playing the bear. So Rose pointed this out again, which is, I was like, when I read that ask, I was just sitting there for a long while, like, oh my God. It's like, it really is like the most, it's funny because it really is the most obvious connection. And like, when you realize it, you're like, oh my God, yeah, why didn't I think of that? So, but the fact that I didn't think of it, I was just like, oh my God. But there's this festival in ancient times that where it was supposed to be like girls kind of getting ready for, you know, transitioning in their whole transitioning from girls to women and everything. And they would essentially, they called it playing the bear, which was supposed to be like them being little bears of Artemis. And I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorite. I don't think we know too much about it, unfortunately. I think that was one, if I'm remembering my research correctly. I think they danced, which again, because dancing is very important to Artemis, but I think we don't have all of the details. But as I said, I linked an essay all the way up at the top of the chat where you can read more about it. But you know, the whole idea of playing the bear for Artemis, and here's Turning Red, where this young girl is turning into a bear. Like how more like in your face can we get? I think it's really just an interesting concept too when you think about this idea of relating bears to young girls, right? Isn't that an interesting? I imagine Artemis gets along real well with the Muses. You know, they hang out with her brother a lot, so. And since she hangs out with her brother a lot, sometimes begrudgingly, I imagine she gets along with them really well. So, yeah. I mean, I've had the Muses around, but not enough to know how Artemis is with them. So I don't have experiences with that. Yeah, I highly recommend watching Turning Red. It was a very cute movie. I enjoyed it. Yeah, so turning into a bear. I'm trying to think of what are the other, I think those were the big ones that I wanted to discuss. Oh yeah, she might dance with the Muses. Was that when Apollo was playing the lyre and everyone was dancing? Because I do remember in one of the Homeric hymns, Apollo is playing the lyre and everyone's dancing. So that might have been, she might have been dancing with the Muses. I could see that. So I think that's like most of my presentation on, well, yeah, that has to do with Turning Red. I can go into other things though about Artemis. Unless you guys have, if you guys have any questions or thoughts that you want to share, feel free to. That has to do with Artemis. Or anything that you noticed with Turning Red and that relates to Artemis, feel free. The other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is Artemis in relation to witchcraft. This has nothing to do with Turning Red. But and because I had realized that for me, children are powerful witches, sorcerers, magicians, whatever word you want to use. They are the most powerful, in my opinion. And which then would mean that relates to Artemis, right? That Artemis, I think there's a lot of things that connect Artemis with witchcraft. For like my personal craft, it's her being attached to childhood that is really the big connection for me. So, because little Jessie was the most powerful. Like, little Jessie was doing things that I look back on that now and I'm like, the hell? Oh my God, this kid could manifest anything. I was really, and I especially, like, I do believe that Artemis has been with me my entire life because I have always had a strong connection to animals. Like, I made friends with every animal that I came across. Like, even ones where it's like, I probably should not have been around that animal, but people were like, that dog is never that nice to anybody. And then, but to me, they were like a smush, you know? And I just always had a connection with animals. I loved trees. I would befriend trees. I would read them stories. I would hang out with them. I loved to sit outside with the trees and just talk to them like they were my friends. And then the other big thing was the connection I came up with that I'm like, oh, this makes sense. I was obsessed with twins as a kid. Obsessed. Like, to the point I was really jealous that I didn't have a twin. And now I'm like, oh, it's because I had two twins hanging out in my life, probably. And I was like, damn them, they're so lucky. Artemis was like, fine, you can have mine. But anyway, so I do believe Artemis has been around. And so for me, I connect my witchcraft to Artemis because it's all, to me, it's like I find power through my child self. That's kind of, the more I connect to little Jessie, the more it's like, that's the source of my power. Like, she's the source of my power. So that's how I grow as a witch. At least that's how I see it as. And it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that Artemis has me doing is much more based in things that are childish, you know, like she was having me read children's books and picture books and was like, and I found inspiration in there, like sometimes more than I was finding in like the witchy books that I was reading. She encourages me to use pop culture and the things that little me loved and I still love today to draw inspiration from in regards to my craft and things like that. So yeah, I think like Artemis's connection to childhood is an aspect of her that's, I think, a very important aspect of her that tends to kind of go unrecognized. But I could just be saying that because it's like the most important part of our relationship, because I do definitely work primarily with that aspect of Artemis in everything that I do, because a lot of my whole journey is about my child self, and whether that's healing, you know, healing him, or connecting to her, or however, you know, it's extremely important, and Artemis has been at the center of it. Yeah, it's true. Mine hasn't either. Yeah, my taste in pop culture hasn't evolved much either. I still, yeah. All the stuff that I watch now, I think little Jessie would have been watching too. Like, I love Steven Universe. I love Avatar. I love all different anime. Like, my whole life revolves around Demon Slayer right now. I'm literally staring at a sticker of an Osuke that I have on my computer. Like, I'm wearing my Inuyasha and Sesshomaru shirt. Like, I love all that stuff. So, yeah. But I think, basically, I think this whole live stream is essentially me just saying if there's anything within your childhood that you need to work on, whether that's like connecting to your child self, healing your child self, or whatever it is, Artemis is the way to go. I recommend Artemis. Oh yeah, Artemis likes Pokemon. Artemis absolutely likes Pokemon. Completely. There's little pocket monsters that battle. I mean, come on. So her. Right? You can just kind of see, like, when you look back at your childhood, you're like, oh, there's Artemis. She's been there the whole time. So she's like, it's really like, I'm going to start getting emotional. Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to start getting emotional because I'm heading into like emotional territory. But like for me, it's like part of reconnecting with my child self is also reconnecting with Artemis, because clearly little me had a relationship with Artemis that I am like only waking up to recently. And so it's also about that, you know, it's about us reconnecting. And that's another thing that I feel why I feel she's always been there is because it's like, I feel it, the nostalgia isn't just the activities I'm doing, but it's also how I'm feeling having Artemis there alongside me. You know what I mean? So, yeah, exactly. Artemis is definitely all about Pokemon. She loves Pokemon. I played that. The new one, I played that with her. She loves it. Especially because for me, Pokemon is I'm gonna show how old I am. Even though I said I was, turning 34, but still. When I was a kid is when Pokemon first came to the United States. And I remember playing the game for the first time, like I think it was Red and Blue. Yeah. I remember playing those. So for me, Pokemon is also extremely nostalgic, which then also relates to Artemis. But I think for a lot of us, Pokemon is nostalgic. Like regardless of when you got into it or how old you are, for a lot of us, that kind of came along with childhood is playing Pokemon, right? Oh, I love that. Oh, you have a twin too? You have a twin? Yeah, Artemis has to be like lucky. Little me wanted a twin so bad. So bad. I don't think what else to talk about with Artemis. They went a lot faster than I thought it was going to. Anybody got any questions about Artemis? If not, I might think about wrapping this up at the 2-hour mark. Ooh, that's nice. Bone china. I need to create I'm hoping to get a desk soon so that I can do my live streams at the desk and everything, but also I want to, because right now I don't have like real proper space for the gods, except for Aphrodite. Aphrodite has a proper space. It seems correct, doesn't it? She's all set up in the bedroom. She's good. I love it. But nobody else, unfortunately, has a proper space right now. But that's because it's like my living room is still a disaster. I still have to like rearrange everything. So I'm hoping to get a desk. And actually, where I'm sitting right now, I'm hoping to move things around and make where I'm sitting right now an altar space, because you can't really see, but it's like actually a little alcove, which is kind of perfect to create a little sacred space there, but we'll see. My goal is to kind of have that as the back here, the altar, over there, the desk, and then put like the TV and sitting area that way. But we'll see how that goes. But I don't think, I'm trying to decide if I want to do like what I had last time, because all the gods aren't going to fit on one altar. It's not going to happen. But my thought was originally, like a while ago, I was actually thinking of making like a shelf that runs along part of the room and have all of my statues and like little shrines for all of them up there. And then what I would do is to mimic kind of how the ancient Greeks did festivals, because if you read a lot of how they did their festivals, one of the big aspects is they would take a statue of a god that they're honoring, and they'd take it and they'd bring it to a certain place, and then they'd, clean it and cleanse it and decorate it and do whatever to it. And that was part of the festival. So I was thinking of, I could recreate that by whenever it's a certain god I'm honoring, it's like I take the statue down from the shelf and I put it on the altar and then do whatever it is that I'm going to do. And then it's like swapping it out. So that was part of my thought process to do, and I may do that. I can definitely see that at Artemis being like an aunt, because it's like I actually see her. There are some people that see her as like a mother figure, which is, fine. That's how people resonate with her. I'm not here to judge anybody. It's just, I don't see that. I don't see mother energy from her at all. But definitely much more like big sister kind of energy, or aunt. I definitely could see aunt. Like she's like the cool aunt, she's that cool aunt that like will, when if like the parent says, well, they can't do this, and it's like, okay, and then they let you do the cool aunt lets you do it. Because I had it kind of reminds me a little bit of my relationship with my one uncle, because he's only 11 years older than me. Like he was young when I was born, and so he was more of like my big brother to me than an uncle. But like he was the one who gave me like the CDs that had the parental advisory stickers on it. My parents wouldn't let me have those, or we'd listen to it in his truck. And like he was the one that we would do all, like we would get into trouble and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I see Artemis. I can definitely see that. Yeah. Oh, Belle, stop. You don't have to get me no plushes. Belle, you're always trying to get me stuff. You're too nice. Oh, see? Yeah, but it feels more like a sibling relationship kind of, right, Melanie? It's like, yeah, my uncle was always like more of like my older brother. We'd had so much fun. But yeah, I can definitely see Artemis being like that. And it works too, because Apollo's so I don't say he's strict, but he's very like, because Apollo's a great dad, which is something I always forget. Not that he's a great dad, but that he's a dad. And he gets very offended. He gets very offended when I forget that he's a dad. It's just weird to me. Him and Hermes, for some reason, my brain is just like, I can't comprehend the fact that you two are fathers. And then Apollo's like, I mean, I get Hermes, but me? Hermes is like, excuse you, did dad trust you with Dionysus or me? Pretty sure it was me, and Dionysus came out great. So like, but yeah, Apollo being like, he's the one that would have like, oh no, they can't do this, they can't do that, don't get in any trouble, blah blah blah. And I was be like, okay, okay, okay. And then do all of those things. It works. Oh, Belle, stop. You're too nice. Aw. What else about Artemis? I don't know. I think that's all I got. That is all I got. But yeah, if you haven't seen Turning Red, definitely recommend it. Especially so that now that you see all of this stuff that we're talking about, it'd be really cool for you to watch it and see if you notice anything that we didn't talk about. Think of other things about Artemis. I think I'm done, guys. I think I've hit everything I want to talk about. Yes! I need to see that drawing of Hermes. Yes! Definitely check it out and let me know what you think of it. Yeah, I could definitely understand when certain aspects of Artemis being more, again, because I always have to remind myself that I work specifically with Artemis, who represents the childhood realm. So I'm working with a very different Artemis than somebody who maybe is working with an Artemis who assists in childbirth, you know? And maybe the Artemis who's attached to the moon, you know, that's a little bit, because I know the moon is seen as having motherly energy, right? So I can definitely understand how some people would get that vibe from her. It's just not my experience with her. Definitely much more big sister energy, because she teases and she's a little fierce sometimes. My God, really? Sorry. Yes, DM me. I want to see it. Does Artemis like gardening? I would imagine she would. I associate gardening more with like Demeter and Persephone, but Artemis is a goddess of wildlife and the forest and all that. So I imagine she's all about gardening, especially considering gardening helps reduce waste and everything. So yeah, I imagine that Artemis would definitely enjoy gardening. Oh, that's cool. I want to get into gardening, but I'm afraid to. I'm actually thinking I'm just going to start with one plant. I'm just going to get one plant. I'm going to get it for Bieltana that's happening next. By the way, oh, that's what we could talk about. What we're going to talk about next Sunday, because I'm trying to figure out because I do want to do a live stream considering it is Bieltana, but I don't know. I'm trying to think of what exactly we can talk about. I was thinking, considering like it's a festival, instead of like having it very specific to that one festival, actually just discussing festivals in general and how we can go about celebrating them, modernizing them, how to kind of create your own calendar of sorts. Or taking the themes of the holiday and kind of just discussing those. So I haven't decided yet. So I don't know what you guys would think. Because yeah, I definitely want to celebrate it with you guys. Right? That's what I was thinking. I thought it kind of came to me, because that's actually what I'm doing this year is trying to create my own festival calendar, and definitely and kind of like, I just lost my train of thought. Oh my god. Yeah, creating my own festival calendar and how to modernize festivals and everything, because that's a big thing for me. Modernizing in general is a big thing for me, I think, as we have kind of, if you followed me for a while, you know that that's kind of my bag. That's what I'm thinking about doing, Melanie. I'm thinking about just starting with one house plant and just trying to keep that alive before I like really commit to like a whole garden, you know, taking it one step at a time. Because I struggle with that. I don't know if any of you struggle with that, but like wanting to do too much at once. Like you decide you want to do this thing, so then you just like go all in instead of like taking your time with it. I have that problem. Apollo tells me I have that problem all the time, where I get way too, I think of the bigger picture instead of like breaking it down into smaller steps. So it's like, if the idea of starting a whole garden is overwhelming, just start with one plant and then you could always do more next year, you know? I can't even keep a cactus alive. Ooh, Encanto. Huh. I didn't think about that. I don't know. I didn't, I mean, there are definitely elements there. For me, though, it wasn't like that movie resonated with me, not necessarily because I thought of the gods, I thought of myself. I was like, oh, I'm Louisa. And also Mirabelle. I'm like, I'm both of them. And Bruno. I'm like all of this in my family somehow. I think they like having nature though as offerings. You know, it's nature. Yeah, I do like that idea too of using plants to connect with ancestors. That's a really, I wanted to oh, that's nice. I actually want to get flowers for Bieltana. I want to start kind of keeping flowers because I really love them. And I think they make such nice they do make such nice offerings. All right. I think we're done. Again, unless anyone's got anything else they want to talk about or questions they want to ask about Artemis, stuff they want to share, I think we're good. I think we just again, reminder, links all the way up in the beginning of the chat if you want to read more about Artemis. Those are a good place to start. I do really want to get back into making podcasts, and I think when I get back to that, the twins will likely be some of the first ones I do, especially because I had promised Apollo forever ago that I would make an episode for him, and that obviously never happened. So I will keep you in my prayers, Belle. I hope you get that job. I will pray to Hermes and to Zeus. Hermes is god of careers and jobs in general, and then Zeus always with anything that has to do with the law. Oh, it's National Princess Week. That's cute. Didn't know they have that. All right. We look like we are good to go then. I hope this was informative. I hope that you learned something, or you kind of feel like hanging out with Artemis, or you just want to watch Turning Red. Or you just had fun. You had some fun for 2 hours on a Sunday. I know I did. I had a good time. But yeah, I think next time we'll talk about festivals. I think that'll be a good. I know a lot of people like, that's a big one, is the festivals and everything. I really enjoyed it too. You all had wonderful thoughts and things to share. Melanie, thanks for always having my back with the good info. Yeah. All right. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you next Sunday. And again, links all the way up. Links all the way up. Yes, read the Iliad. I should do a whole thing on the Iliad. That's another thing I really want to do, is a whole thing on the Iliad. But anyway, okay. Bye, guys. Heart you all.